Hello everyone, Michelle here from the Creative Cove. Thanks for joining me today. Today is going to be a pretty quick video. I've been asked by a few people how to do the Raven in watercolor here, and he's quite quick and relatively simple to do once you've done the sketch. So let's get started. I apologize for my hands. I was just doing some eco painting, like jelly plate painting. Printing, I should say, and I have it all over me. So I do shower. I just haven't had a chance to really clean my hands before I started the video, and I wanted to get this video going because my husband called to say he would be home early today, and I want to make sure that I don't get interrupted filming. So let's get cracking. So I'm going to just use my HB pencil. I have a scrap piece of watercolor paper here. This is a cheapy paper. I think it's a Michael brand Artist Loft, so it's not a very high quality watercolor paper, but it's good for these kind of projects and for practice. I just want to make sure I'm going to be in frame here. My camera mount is always changing on me. Okay, there we go. So let's do a raven. So their beaks are pretty big. So I start feeling out the beak here by doing this kind of curved. I'm going to go a little bit darker so hopefully you can see this carved, kind of almost like a looks kind of like something you'd use for a bird would use for like fishing, but they're more scavengers here. They're scavenger birds, so I think they eat just about anything they can get their mouth around. So I'm going to sketch, and I can't really tell you what shapes to make other than just sketching along with me. And it really is just feeling it out. So you're going to see me pick up, switch the pencil around and do some erasing in a minute because I want to make sure I get my proportions right. So I always start with the beak, and then I'll go and feel his head out. So I kind of want to make sure I get the overall shape of the bird. And like I said, things will change as I go. It will constantly be manipulated. So I'm using a reference out of a book for this. Just because I have lots of ravens here, but because they're so dark, I can't really see all their details until they're up close to me. So I decided to use one of these free images from well, not free, but an image from a book out of from the library. So it's just learn how to sketch kind of book. So I'm just going to kind of slowly build up his shape here. So already I can tell the size of him and you know, where I want to make changes. Okay, this book keeps closing on me. So I'm going to work down his tail. So this is his back. This is his wing folded over his shoulder here. This is going to be his back. And then his back folded wing feathers. And I'm not going to get into tons of detail because the type of watercolor painting we're going to do is quick. It's a quick style. Am I even in frame sketching down here? So there's his tail. Those all fold as well, and then these would all have feathers, which I'm not going to get into right now. I think I'll make him a little bit thinner. Got a little fat there, so I'm just gonna thin him out. Again, all these feathers are folded on themselves. There's these other feathers here. And then he's facing that way, so he's kind of turned away from us. So I feel like I've shortened his neck a little too much. So this would be his neck. I feel like I need to move his beak a little bit higher. And this is the beauty of sketching, is you're constantly feeling it out till you get what you want. Sketching is a great way of learning proportions and capturing form, especially if you're outside trying to, you know, draw a bird that might fly away. Sketching is one of the best ways to do that because It's very loose, it's very quick. You're not concentrating on tons of detail, you're just really trying to capture the form at this point. And in this case, I want to make sure I get, so right now I can tell his beak is too short, so I'm going to pull out the beak a little longer. And some people who are really clever at drawing can just nail this right off the bat. I'm more of a sketcher. I gotta kind of feel it out and be happy with my sketch before I proceed to either coloring it in or doing any of that. So I think I got his shape. I'll make sure his eye is in the right place. I think it's too far back, so I'm going to move it forward. So this is definitely a sketch along with me. This is not copy as I go because you can see I'm changing it as I go. So this line here is important because that shows how his neck is bent and facing the other way. And then he's got a bit of an indentation in the back of his head here from separation from his neck to his head. So this is his head, and then it kind of comes out like this. I think that's it. I think I'm happy with the sketch. So now I'm just going to tidy it up a little because I do want to use a watercolor here. And then I should probably put his feet in. So he's got a foot that comes out that you can just see. It comes out here. And he's hanging on to something. And then the other one is kind of tucked behind his tail. Okay, that will do for now. All right, so let's have some fun with watercolor. This is much bigger than what I would use in my journal, but I wanted to kind of go big. See, I'm using a number 8 round level 1. I don't know what that means. Watercolor brush. So it's pretty beaten up. I'm also using my Mei Liang paints here. Just going to clean off a spot. Notorious for not cleaning up my palette when I'm done. That's the beauty of watercolor. You just reactivate them. And I'm going to use this black, which is called what in this collection? Because there are lots of different blacks. And you're going to find a black you like and find blacks you don't like. So this one is coal black. So let's load up some black. And I'm pretty much only using black. I think I used a little bit of maybe some burnt sienna, because you know I can't resist burnt sienna. Just try and keep my palette in the frame here. I just want to make sure I'm in. Okay, so I like to put the concentration of color in the darkest of places in the drawing. And you can see I'm just throwing it in. The only thing I'm really paying attention to is the way the feathers grow. That's pretty important. So you want to make sure that you're following the form in the sense that you're catching the direction that things grow. So if I paint him straight up and down, he's going to look very flat. But if I'm painting him like I'm patting him on the head, so to speak, then it gives it a little bit more definition in his feathers and his overall appearance. It's hard to sketch and paint and explain things at the same time. So if I sound funny, I apologize. I'm just concentrating on two things. So I just clean my brush, and I'll use a piece of paper towel here and kind of control the amount of water in my brush. And then I like to just kind of soften all these together and just kind of make the paint blend into itself. Now, if you find you've overdone it, so let's say I want to put in a little bit more of a brighter spot here, I'll remove some of that paint for now. and lighten it up. And the better watercolor paper you have, the more abuse you can give it, has been my experience. So like I said, this is just a cheapy watercolor paint. Nothing super duper fancy about this paper. Did I say paint? I meant paper. So I just kind of let that bleed and pool there, and we'll see what happens. So there's also this really fun technique where you can load up the paint with just a little bit of water. So you have lots of paint on here. It's very high pigment, and it creates this kind of scratchy look. So it's like dry on dry technique, which I really like to use to indicate feathers. It's a really fun way to create some texture and drama in a watercolor painting. And I really like using it for things like feathers, hair, anything that's got this kind of rough texture to it. You can just kind of throw it in wherever you want. Again, you want to control the amount of water you have on your brush and just push down. So watercolor is really fun to experiment with different techniques. Wet on wet, wet on dry, dry on dry, all kinds of fun stuff. I'm just going to throw a little bit more here. So here's dry on dry. So you can see you can have a lot of fun here. I'm just going to take some of this back off. So I'm lifting it by reabsorbing some of the water before it completely dries, because I want a little bit of a highlight on his beak here before I decide how dark I want to make everything. You can lift more. So when you lift with a dry brush too, it can create some fun textures. And I just play, really do just kind of have fun playing with these paints, creating some fun birds. And I love ravens. Ravens are one of my favorites. They're so smart. We have tons of them here. We have a lot of crows as well, but the ravens are really fun. And they talk to you. You know, they got that kind of deep-throated grovel that they do. My mom used to feed a raven out west. It would come and call for her. Like, it's supper time, where you at? And she'd put some treats out for it, you know, leftover whatever she had in the fridge, and she would come, and then she eventually brought her young with her. So my mom tried not to make the bird dependent on her, but you can't resist the beauty of these birds and how clever they are. And there was a lot of competition, so to speak, out there with the birds. There was lots of eagles and things, so you can imagine it wasn't easy to raise young in that environment. So any little goodie that they could get, they would take. I'm going to pull the shoulder out. It's really the folded wing, but I feel like it's maybe a little bit too narrow now. I might have had it sketched right in the first place. Just feel like he needs to be a little bit broader because they are huge birds. Okay, so we kind of established his body here. I'm just gonna paint his feet in real fast. Not really interested in the feet. I know that sounds funny, but I really want to focus on him and just kind of camouflage the feet a little bit. Take a little bit of that off so I can play with it later. All right, and go back up here and go into a little bit more serious black. Let's switch to a smaller brush too. So I'm going to go into the Craft Ammo number 3. And it's a round brush as well. And I'm just going to now darken up some areas here. I'm going to put his eye in. So I like to give a very bright highlight in the eye. So I'm just going to make sure you get the shape right. I'm going to stay off the edge here because it's still wet. And I like to keep a bit of a rim here for where the eye meets the feathers. And they have this very hairy cover on their beaks. I'm going to turn it a little bit, sorry. That kind of feathers out over the beak. And is that dry? Yeah, pretty dry. So I'm going to pull the line from the beak out. Okay, and then again some hair. He's got some hair coming off the beak down here. Again, the direction in which you're painting this matters. So take your time and have a good look at your reference, or a good look at the painting I'm doing here, and see which direction I'm painting the feathers, because you need to make sure we get the feathers right. All right, so this line here, I really want to darken behind there just to show the difference between the head and shoulders. I'll widen this line a little bit. I'm just going to go back to my big brush real quick here and just kind of soften that out. I feel like his head's not quite the right shape. See if we can get his head a little bit better. A little bit boxier, I think. That's why the sketch is really kind of important to play with as well. And take your time and get the sketch right. Then your watercolor process can be a lot easier on you. If you take the time to sketch out the details that you want to put in, it helps a lot. Just going to give his beak just a little bit of texture here. And we're just using black, so you can see the range of variations you can get from a very concentrated saturation of color to a very watered down look. And then you can just have fun with the brush and build him up with different kind of techniques, the dry brush, anything like that. Just going to fill that in a little bit. So you can keep going and keep going, and of course you can go over with pen after. You can use a white marker to highlight something you might have missed or want to drop some contrast in. So maybe you want to pop the contrast in between the shading of, say, his wing and his body. So you can put a little bit of richer pigment underneath here, kind of helps separate everything. And then another one underneath his kind of flight wings here. And then another one underneath his tail. And this is where your artisticness kicks in. This is what separates your sketch from mine and anyone else's that might be following. This is where you put your own kind of touch on it, right? Throwing in where you think the color should go. And there's no real wrong or right here. It's really just a question of, again, following the form of the bird. Again, so you can see I'm coming up now, and I know his wing is tucked in around. So I want to kind of show that a little bit by the brush strokes that I'm using. So I'm not going straight across like this or straight up and down. I'm moving with the flow. And the way I think about it when I paint is I try to think, how would I, if this bird was in front of me and it would let me pat it, how would I pat it? would I pat it backwards? No, you're going to pat it in the flow of its growth. Just like you brush your hair, you don't brush your hair backwards. So think of that. That may be a nice little tip for some of you when you're trying to figure out, well, I don't know which way their hair grows. Well, if you were to think about how you'd pat the animal, that might really help you. So I'm just going to lift this up because it's hard to tell because it's so far away from me how big it is. I feel like he needs a little more volume here. I'm going to puff him out just a little bit because they are huge birds. I think he should go right into his leg here. There, I feel like that's a bit better. And then maybe we'll put a little burnt sienna in there. You could put some, blues in there to reflect kind of the blue color that they might show off when they're in the sun. Mine's more of a Halloween feel, so I like the kind of grungy browny look. But that's just me. There we go. Am I in frame? I'm sorry. Jeez Louise. There we go. And then maybe put some kind of hairs coming back here like this. Oh, I don't know if you could hear that. There's a raven right now crowing away out there. Out my window. All right. So I'm going to let that dry. And put a couple of little lines around his eye here. And then we'll see where we take it after that. Maybe we're done. Maybe I want to add a little something else. I just want to make sure I'm getting his proportions right. So you can see he comes together pretty quick. So maybe we'll do another one. Do I have another scrap piece of watercolor kicking around here? That one's pretty scrappy. What's this one? Here we go. I think this came out of yeah, this is the other video that I did. So let's just use the back side of this. And let's sketch another guy. So I'm just gonna pull him. This time we'll do him. He's facing the same direction, but we'll do it so that he is sitting forward. So this one here, I'll pull this reference. It's a bit smaller and easier to maneuver, so I'll pull that in. Hopefully you can see that. And we'll sketch him real quick. And then some angles are easier to draw than others, that's for sure. Again, I'm just sketching them out. So I want to make sure I get his beak right. Shape of his head coming back. And his eye in the right place. Excuse me. These big jaws, these big... Sorry, I still can't get rid of this darn cold. Okay, so wings tucked over. This is underneath. All right, let's paint this guy real quick. Sorry. All right, so back to my big, paintbrush here. I'm gonna thin that out a little bit. And just fill in his head. also wet on dry. So my paper is dry, my brush is wet. And we can do this one pretty quickly. So I want to show you the idea behind doing them pretty quick and loose and casual and stress-free, so to speak. You just don't have time to think. You're just going to put the paint in. Think about, oh, do I have too much paint? Do I have too little paint? Just go for it. It's just a sketch. And if you don't like it, you toss it in the recycle bin. You start again. Trust me, I've thrown many paintings in the recycle bin. You can have fun too with watching how this paint kind of reacts and dries. And see how loose I'm staying to do the feathers here. As long as I'm going in the right direction, it's going to look okay. Get around his eye a little neater. More saturation. So just straight into the wet paint there, right into the, straight into it. So much fun. Nice and loose. Make sure you get your proportions and everything right. Make sure he actually looks like a raven. So mine right now, I'm not 100% convinced he looks like a raven yet. But I'm gonna keep going and see what I think. I don't know if it's his beak that's bugging me. Maybe it's... But this is the fun of it. You just keep going and then suddenly it clicks. So the dry on dry here. Lots of fun. Just gonna lift him up for a second. He's got a bit of a pigeon head. So let's see if we can fix that. I think maybe he's got a little bit more of a square here. This one I'm just going off my picture, and then I'm going to put a little bit of detail in with some pen after. Okay, let's do his feet real quick. Got these gnarly kind of clawed feet here. I'm not going into too much detail in the feet. He's got his feathers underneath. Okay, so is this guy dry? He's pretty dry. So now you can have fun with pens. I love to use pens, so here's a collection of different pens that I have. So we're going to use this Uniball here. Vision, it's called Uniball Vision, and it is a waterproof ink, which I really like. And then you can really put some details of feathers in here. You can really go to town on it if you want. I like to kind of scratch little feathers along their hairline here so they shows that real feathery beak that they've got. You can of course do this with the paintbrush, but I really like the mixed. I like to mix it up with the pen and the watercolor. I feel like he could be just a little bit longer in his beak. Is that right? Maybe a little thicker in the beak too. Maybe that's what it is. And just keep kind of feeling it out here. I'm sorry, I have to keep moving it. Let's make it even longer and see if we like that. So you can see, like, nothing's not fixable. I feel that's a bit better. You know, you can always play with that. I feel like his eye's too far away too now because we've made his beak. I feel like his eye should be a bit bigger. So let's do it. See if I got a Posca pen here that will work. Got this guy. Bear with me. Yeah, I think his eye's too small now. Let's see if I can get this to cooperate. So I'm gonna, ooh, that's a lot. That's a lot. Where's my paper towel? Okay, let's take some of that off. It's a wee bit much. Okay, let's figure out where we want it. So I think I'm gonna put his eye back here. Cool the jets on the Posca. Let's put it, say, about here. And let's color this in. See how you can change things? Like nothing, don't ever think that nothing is not fixable. I mean, you can get frustrated and be like, okay, I'm done with this image. Sure, everybody does. But it's not something that you have to kind of, you know, like you can play with things and see where it takes you. And yes, sometimes you can get really frustrated for sure. No doubt about it. So here I am with the Posca now because I kind of like the look of the Posca. I'm going to throw some, maybe a little reflective light on his wings. And it's just, now I'm just building up and scratching in textures. But so the possibilities and having fun with this style of watercolor is really freeing in a lot of ways. So just sketch along, play, be kind of fearless with it. Don't stress too much about it because it is just having fun and experimenting. I just want that to dry a little more because I want to go a little bit darker in there. So here you can play with the detail on the feet a little bit more, the branch maybe he's resting on. And you can put detail in here, go back with the watercolor. Go back in the watercolor if we want, add a little bit more black to the foot, because why not? Again, that dry on dry is really fun for wood, because it kind of creates the bark texture for you. Let's see if I can't get this to darken a little bit. Want his eye nice and dark at the bottom here. I feel he looks a lot better now that we made his beak bigger and his eye bigger. I'm much happier. And that's what sketching is all about. So technically, you know, we're sketching with our watercolor, just feeling our way around. Okay, so there's him. I would probably go a little darker in some spots with my, just because I love to add textures to things. So this scratchy, it might be a bit hard to see, but just scratching in this just adds more richness and layers. That is what I love to do. And again, very loose. I can't stress enough how loose I want you to stay when you try this technique. throw away everything you know about watercolor and just go for it. Try dry on dry, try wet on wet, try wet on dry. Just keep trying things. And then go back in with a pen or a pencil. You don't have to have fancy tools. You can use whatever you have. Just bear in mind the nature of those tools. So if you do want to go back into this, say with the watercolor again, and not have your pen run, then you would need a waterproof type ink in order to do so. Okay. So there's our Raven. There's one. Do we have time to finish this guy? Am I driving you nuts? So again, I'm going to play with the beak a bit. I want to put a bit of a highlight on. Kind of separate the beak a little here. And I like to sometimes rub the Posca so that it blends with the color underneath. Kind of softens it a bit. And then we'll put a highlight around his eye a little more, which we'll play with once it dries. Make sure we got it in proportion. Throw some, maybe got a little highlight up here. The light is hitting his shiny feathers. Again, you can rub it out a little bit if it's too much. You will get it on your finger, but if you're not getting dirty, you're not having fun. Okay, so I'll go back in with the black pen now. I feel like he's smiling. It looks like he's in a good mood, this bird. Bright-eyed. Yeah, I'll give him some feathers here around his beak. Remember, paying attention to which direction they grow. A couple of feathers coming back here. Fold of his head. And maybe out through his chest. And all we've used is black and white here. Oh, sorry, and on the one I did use some burnt sienna, raw sienna, burnt sienna. And just play. Keep it loose. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've given it a try. If this loose approach is easy for you or difficult, what are your challenges? What do you struggle most with when it comes to watercolor? Because I think what turns people off watercolor the most, or makes people afraid of it, is that you can't really, it takes a long time to be able to control and learn watercolor. You know, it's got a very specific nature, and it might take you a few goes before you really understand its nature. And a lot of people kind of get scared off of it, but it's not a scary medium. It's just about letting yourself have the freedom to try something and not worry about the end result. Just have fun with the process. That's pretty much the only thing I can tell you at this point, is just have fun with it. It's really, really a fun medium to play with. All right, I could keep going and keep going here, but we'll wrap it up. So there's our Raven, and there's our other Raven. Nice big guy, like him. He's cute. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it inspires you to try watercolor approach with even something as simple as, well, in this case, a 3-color palette, the white, the black, and a little bit of burnt sienna, or a simple black and white, or simply just black, and the variations that we got between watering down the saturation of the pigment you pick. So I hope you enjoy that. If you do, please hit the like button, share, and we'll see you again soon, guys. Take care. Bye.